Like I never really smoked weed or anything, but I would bring, a bunch of Fireball or whiskey or whatever out in a flask or airplane bottles. And every time I'm on the lift, I'm taking a sip or
Yeah.
down in a shooter. So yeah,
Do you
that's
think your
definitely kind of what.
did your skiing skills improve, or did they get worse as you drank? Or are
I
you just a
mean,
little more reckless?
Definitely more reckless. I felt like I was doing good,
Yeah.
but who knows? Like God knows what I was doing out there. But going back I have like a full sober season under my belt now, and I feel like I'm a much better skier.
Yeah.
If you
Awesome.
aren't progressively getting drunk every time you ski.
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
Sober Strong apparel isn't just lifestyle wear, it's battle gear. We rep sobriety like a badge of honor, and every piece you throw on says you're part of the crew that doesn't back down. Every order fuels recovery with 10% donated to treatment facilities. Hit SoberStrongApparel.com and use code ROCKBOTTOM at checkout for 10% off. Stay sober, stay true, rep the crew.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to Rock Bottom with Ryan. I'm here doing another episode. Here we got Austin Henson here today. He's from the No Booze podcast. Austin, how you doing? Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from.
Good, yeah. Austin Henson. Yeah, I run the No Booze podcast, and I'm in Yakima, Washington right now.
Awesome. I'm originally from Seattle area.
Nice.
I live over in Idaho now, but yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the whole Northwest. It's good to meet somebody else out there. I noticed you had like a 206 or 253 number or something, so I was like, he's got to be somewhat close to me.
But yeah.
A lot of the people I've been interviewing are like Florida, Wisconsin, California, but So if you don't mind, can you give me kind of just a little brief overview? How long have you been sober? What was your drug of choice?
So I was a big drinker, and I've been sober for a year, 8 months, and 9 days. So, like a lot of people, grew up fairly normal, as America would describe it, and drinking like a normal high school kid, normal college kid. And then as I got out of where it becomes socially acceptable or even suggested in a way, I found that maybe my drinking habits weren't so cool after all. So
it started off social, and it kind of just it was like a weekend thing, and then it kind of escalated from there. Like, how many drinks were you thinking you were starting with that was good enough and sufficient for you? And then when did it start to kind of become more than a party?
yeah, so I started drinking when I was like 13 probably. And in those times when you're a kid and you can't go buy it for yourself, it's really sporadic. Like if you get some, you drink a little bit or a lot, depending on who you're with at the time. And so I think I developed a kind of unhealthy relationship with alcohol as a young guy, because I kind of developed the mindset of I'm going to drink all that I can get my hands on because I don't know when I'm going to be able to do it again. And this is fun, right? So, and then, as that progressed into college and whatnot, when I could finally buy it for myself, the drinking habit at that point was about 8 years old. So didn't really go away. So I was finding myself being considered like a heavy drinker or somebody that drinks a lot, and not necessarily like I drink every day, but I drink a lot once I start drinking. Yeah. And, and when I was still in college, that was cool, right? Everybody, college kids drink a lot, and that's cool depending on who you hang out with. But then, as I got out of college and into the world, and I'm not around my buddies 24/7 and I'm hanging out with my wife at home, it's like, why are you drinking so much? Like, this is just a normal Saturday night at the house and you're having 12 beers by yourself. Like, what's going on there? And so yeah, that's kind of when the red flags started to go up. Like, my wife and friends that aren't big drinkers like I was would be like, why are you drinking so much right now? Like, it's just a Saturday, there's not a party, or it's like a Sunday afternoon and you're having 8 beers. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But as addictions go, I thought it was normal. Yeah. So slowly, I guess, kind of, it stayed about the same amount of worse of bad, I mean, and mixed in there the part that I think, was really bad, but also helped me kind of see how bad and unreasonable I was I like to drink and drive. Like, if I was drinking, I don't care, I'm driving, which is terrible to think about now. But that's kind of like what it was, and that's the probably most socially unacceptable thing that I did that made a lot of people, or several people at least, be like, dude, are you okay? Like, what's going on here? That's not cool at all. So yeah, I got
Yeah.
a little lost in the sauce. I don't even remember what your question was there, but
No, it's fine.
hopefully I got
Was it
close.
mainly beer, or would you resort into hard A sometimes? Or
Well, I would do it all, like whatever I could get my hands on. Like, I wouldn't say I even really had a preference as to beer or liquor or what kind of liquor. Like, whatever was going on that day is what I would do. I found myself, probably when my drinking was at its worst, I would get these things called cut waters. I think they're still pretty popular, but it's like tequila soda, and they're 80 calories a pop, 4% or 4.5%. And I would just crush a whole 12 pack of those, if not more. And then, once I got drunk, then I would drink. If I had liquor at the house or if I was somewhere else, party didn't stop there. But yeah, but really it didn't matter at all. And I would drink whatever because I liked the feeling and not necessarily the taste of any specific thing. I just wanted to get drunk.
was it usually at home, or were you going out to bars and with people usually, or was it times where you were drinking like this alone and then?
There was a time where I was drinking like this alone, and that was, probably the darkest point, I guess, or one of the darkest points. I would definitely go out and drink with others, but like I was kind of the person, a lot of people when they're out, they like to act like they're drinking more than they have. Like if you're at a party, you want to appear that you're, being cool and getting super fucked up or whatever, and you're taking sips of stuff and leaving them somewhere, or maybe dumping a shot out so like you can stay at an appropriate level but seem like you're being cool or whatever. But I was kind of the opposite of that. Like, I would sneak off to the bar, grab a couple shots, try to get myself even more drunk, and then go back to drinking beer with whoever I was hanging out with. So it was like a very self-destructive habit of, like, once I get to a certain point, really, like, after the first beer processes in my system, it's like, all right, how drunk can I get tonight? Yeah. So I would go out or stay in. Didn't really matter. It's just a matter of if I had that first drink, then it's on.
Yeah, totally get it. So if you don't mind me asking, like, how old are you now, and how long do you think your drinking career lasted?
See, I'm 26. So at this point, let's see, it would be, I drank for like, what is that, 11 years? So yeah.
Yeah, you started pretty young then. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like those first like 13 to say 18, it wasn't super constant necessarily, but it was like, kind of the same scenario. If I got my hands on it, it's lights out.
Yeah.
So I count those years for sure.
Can you describe your first drunk experience when
Man, that's a good question. Honestly, like, the times that I think of, it's like my brother and I, we would go on cruises as a family, right? And so he was 3 years old, 2.5 years older than me. So at the time he was in high school and he had high school friends that could get booze. And so the ladder kind of fell down to us and we went on this Carnival cruise and he got like a bottle of vodka or rum. I can't remember. And we got an old shampoo bottle and rinsed it out in the sink and poured the vodka in there so we could sneak it onto the cruise ship and drink. And, once you get on the cruise ship, like there's areas for kids and there's areas for adults. And we would like sneak our way into the adult areas and make more friends, which was like kind of wild to think about from like, if I'm the older person looking at, I'm hanging out with the 13 or 14-year-old drinking. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. So anyways, on a cruise ship, I got fairly drunk out of a shampoo bottle and then ended up in this club and somebody else had water bottles and one of them had Malibu in it and the other one had Everclear in it. So I
Jesus,
took a
Everclear is
couple of sips
deadly.
of the Malibu and like, they're just water bottles with no label on it. And they're sitting under this chair in this club area. So I was taking a couple sips of the Malibu and then I went back and I was, feeling ambitious, going to take a big swig of what I thought was Malibu and it ended up being Everclear. And, once that went down the hatch, it was a nightmare. And so the night kind of got bad from there, but, did turn me away in the long run. So, yeah, that's kind of like the first time I got super drunk that I can remember. Brother just took me back to the room and I crashed.
So, so yeah, my first drunk experience. I actually didn't drink much when I was young. I could count how many drinks I had before I was 19 because I didn't really start drinking until I was in college. But the first experience I had in high school, I was drinking on a 40 ounce of Old English. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how great of a choice that was for my first drink, but a 40 ounce, and I killed like half of it, and then I was trying to finish the rest of it, and I was having my first buzz, so I was like, "Oh, this is a beautiful feeling." And then somebody was playing some kind of slap box game next to me, and they hit the bottle and went into my mouth, broke my teeth out and stuff. So I was like, "Okay, well, maybe drinking is not meant for me." So I didn't drink again until college, basically. But my first drunk experience was just like already consequences right off the bat. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, what? I wish I would have learned that day. It would have saved me another 17 years of drinking, but
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
yeah,
That's crazy.
but thanks for sharing your first experience. So can you describe kind of when, say, towards the end of your drinking, where like things started to really kind of hit? What kind of things were happening? What were your relationships like? And like, how was it the last, few days, week until you really decided to quit?
Yeah. So really like right up at the end there for the last year, I was drinking kind of the same way. Like I went through a period where I was drinking alone a lot to cope with stress or anxiety or whatever. And then I'm married now, so wife moves in, and I stopped drinking as regularly, but still, once I start, I end up drinking a lot. And it kind of brought back old habits of being a kid where when you're 13, 14, 15, you got to kind of hide your alcohol consumption so you don't get in trouble. And after I learned that, my wife didn't like how much I was drinking, I brought those habits back. So I was sneaking around and drinking kind of like whatever I could, whenever I could. And, the sober part of me knew that that wasn't cool. So that's kind of when I started to get suspicious of myself. But then, there were several incidents, like I like to ski. So I would go up to the local ski mountain and get pretty drunk, and then I would drive back about an hour in the snow, in the dark, whatever. And I would get home and, my wife would be like, "Oh, if you're hammered, that's not cool at all." And she would get, pissed. So that happened a couple times. And that's kind of the same thing that happened there. But like, I don't know, I guess to summarize, I was doing the stuff that I'd been doing, and alcoholism accumulates and grows, and it's like once you learn a new bad habit, it just sticks with you. So I was at the culmination of all my bad habits, and one day, March 1st of 2024, went up skiing, ended up killing a fifth of Fireball and had a couple hard ciders at the lodge, and then drove back. And my wife called me, but I was dead set on going to the casino to play some cards. And so I just kept dodging her calls. She knew something was wrong. And then, eventually got a hold of me and heard me slurring my speech and whatnot, and got, rightfully very upset. And
Yeah.
so, as much as like it pains me to say, like, once I got home and we had a conversation, I was finally able to see like how much hurt what I was doing was causing other people, and specifically people that I care about and love. And so like, even though I didn't necessarily like get a DUI or hurt or kill anybody, it was like, oh man, like I think I actually have a problem. Maybe I should go check out AA or something like that.
Yeah.
And so the next morning I did.
Wow. So towards the end there, so I actually grew up skiing as well. Like I grew up in a big ski family because my dad was a rep for Fisher skis and Atomic skis and Elon
Nice.
skis for like my entire childhood. So I always grew up basically on skis since I was like 3 years old, but I never ended up associating skiing with drinking for some reason because my dad was really strict about being a competitive skier. But I like,
Yeah.
I decided, once I got into college and I like kind of started snowboarding a little more, then I started getting to the point where it's like every time I was on the chairlift, I had to have a blunt in my hand or take a puff out of the pipe.
Yeah.
Or take a airplane shot of Fireball or something. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny that you mentioned that because after a while I started to associate it with getting fucked up too.
Yeah, no, I kind of did the same thing because like I started skiing later in life after I already had a drinking problem. And I definitely kind of initially fell in love with skiing because of drinking, because same as you, like I never really smoked weed or anything, but I would bring, a bunch of Fireball or whiskey or whatever out in a flask or airplane bottles. And every time I'm on the lift, I'm taking a sip or
Yeah.
down in a shooter. So yeah,
Do you
that's
think
definitely kind of what.
did your skiing skills improve or did they get worse as you drank? Or were you just a little more reckless?
Definitely more reckless. I felt like I was doing good, but
Yeah.
who knows? Like God knows what I was doing out there. But going back I have like a full sober season under my belt now, and I feel like I'm much better skier.
Yeah.
If you
Awesome.
aren't progressively getting drunk every time you ski. So
How many
yeah, I like it.
how many so you're a big member of AA. What's your most recent ship that you got?
So that's kind of where like I go to AA maybe once a week now. I haven't been a super like good member of AA. For the first 6 months, I was going at least once a week, several times a week. But after that, like I kind of found that, you hear like you want to find a good group that you like to hang around with. And like I was the youngest person in all the meetings I could find by like 20 years. And I didn't really relate with anybody or find somebody that, I wanted to sponsor me. So
Yeah.
I kind of diverged, and like I'd like to go back now just with a little more wisdom. I realize how special and cool it is, but I definitely wouldn't, as much as I like kind of want to now, be able to claim that I'm like a big AA member, because I definitely wasn't a regular member or somebody that goes all the time and gets the chips and has a sponsor and all that. Yeah. So I kind of diverged there a little bit.
No, totally get it. I mean, AA, I know isn't for everyone. It happened to definitely change my life. I mean, I go 5 days a week, even 14 months into sobriety. I have to. I just realize every time I don't go, I start to feel like my mind starts to wander a little bit. So I'm just like the consistency and the just going in, even though I hear a lot of the same stories that I've heard before from the same people. It's just still kind of just always a reminder. And then the more you keep going, the more you start to see new people come in, and you're kind of like, okay, well, this is another reminder that they're coming in and they're coming back to the meetings. It's starting to work for them. Clearly it's working for me after 14 months. So it just kind of
Yeah.
motivates you to want to keep coming back.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
have you built a bunch of friendships in there at least, even though you don't have a sponsor? I'm not a big on, I have a sponsor, but he and I kind of have an understanding that it's like, I'll call him if I feel like I really need him, but we don't like specifically go over the big book together like a lot of sponsors do. I'm not very traditional in that sense, but
Mm-hmm.
but I like going to the meetings just as a reminder. But what like, do you have a bunch of friends in the program?
Honestly, not really. Like, there's familiar faces, and when I go, I talk to them, but it's not like I talk to them outside of meetings or anything like that. Like after kind of the first 6 months, I really like kept to myself and was observing more than like trying to be interactive, and I definitely got a lot from it. But like, that's kind of why I started the podcast, because I was like, a lot of people when they talk about AA, it's like, the greatest thing, and they have a bunch of friends.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't like necessarily true for me. Like, even though I see the value and how awesome it is, it's like it didn't necessarily feel like home. So that's, at that point is when I kind of started the podcast and doing a couple other things here and there to like be my AA in a way when I wasn't going as often as I should. And yeah, like, and through the podcast, like I've made relationships with a couple people through Instagram, and as I opened up a little bit, like I've got in touch with other people that I would have never known were sober and recovering addicts, from my past. So it's been like I've had an abundance of support. It's just not necessarily in the most traditional way, I guess, necessarily.
So when you got sober, how long did you wait before you decided, that you wanted to start a podcast, and like what went through your head when you started it, and how did it start?
Yeah, so kind of like what I was going to AA, and I was like, this, as cool as it is, like this isn't necessarily like what feels right for me, because, be it personality differences or age differences, like I went to multiple different meetings and I couldn't necessarily like find a community necessarily that I felt like I fit in with. So just kind of got the idea of maybe I should just kind of try to start my own community. So yeah, I don't remember exactly, which I probably should, but I want to say it's like somewhere between I don't know, somewhere right after the year mark is when I really started the podcast, because I wanted to also have like, a little bit of credibility and like my feet under me and feel pretty strong in my sobriety and whatnot before I started that. But yeah, so I really just started it to kind of see what kind of community I could like make for myself, and also as a means to keep myself accountable when I'm not going to meetings like I should. Like I know I'm going to have to record an episode at least once a week, if not twice a week. So, and all all my friends know that I do it. So it's not like I can sneak off with one of my friends and get drunk. So it's really just another means to hold me accountable and to, keep me grounded in my sobriety when I'm not going to meetings like I should.
Yeah. No, it's how do you seek out people you interview? Like, are you looking for a demographic of level of sobriety, or like different? Does it matter, what the person's background is, or if they're addicted to drugs or alcohol? Or is it just a little bit of everything?
So I actually haven't done interviews on my show yet. Like I have 26 episodes out, and it's just me talking for like 30 minutes.
Okay, because
So
I
I
noticed
spent
some
a
clips where you're talking and there was a girl listening, so I was just assuming.
Well, yeah. So I did the Reckless Optimist podcast with Megan a couple
Okay,
months
that
or like a
was her
month or so
podcast.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was on her podcast, and that was like the first kind of interview podcast I've done, and then this would be the second. But I'm looking to start doing that. I'm probably right after this going to start playing around with Riverside and see if I can do it, because like for the first bit I really wanted to just kind of share what I had learned and how I feel about things and use it as like a journal in a way for myself.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting to the point where feel like I've said most of what I want to say, so I might as well spread it out and try to learn more from other people, and also, do like what you guys are doing and just kind of share stories of resilience and hope and recovery and all those good things that probably help more people than me just talking about how I feel about stuff. So,
Exactly. No, that's great. So, do you ever kind of look back and think about why, like right now, you're in this position where you're able to help people who are getting new to sobriety or in sobriety or help keep them sober? But like, do you ever wonder if were there any things in the past that happened, maybe growing up and stuff that like really triggered you to want to numb yourself for such a long period of time? Do you ever look back at those things now sober and kind of understand yourself a little better?
yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, if it's too personal, by all means.
No such thing as too personal with me. Like, but I don't know. Honestly, like, I think, for whenever it comes to like alcoholism, it seems like there's like a genetic predisposition, and then there can be like environmental factors that push people that aren't necessarily predisposed to become alcoholics. And I think like I was kind of more just genetically predisposed. Like as soon as I did it, I knew I wanted to keep doing it. But to answer your question, so also when I was 13, I started dipping, like chewing tobacco or whatever. Uh, and so I think getting that addiction going really opened the doors to kind of get addicted to more stuff. Like I was using that as a means to, feel cool and to cope with whatever I thought was so stressful at the time as a 13-year-old. And I think that, that taught me that chemicals and substances and stuff can be a coping mechanism. So then once I started drinking and once the availability came that I could use alcohol to numb myself from stress and pain and grief and whatnot, didn't really matter how traumatic or how bad anything was. If there's any sort of uncomfortability, I'm going to use alcohol as a means to numb that and to get past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, I had a great childhood. It's not like I had, my parents were together, we had a good home, played sports, did well in school. It's not like I lived a traumatic life or anything. So, alcohol doesn't discriminate. It just gets whoever it gets.
Do you feel like you ever suffered from like anxiety, social anxiety, depression?
Well, I think, yeah, I definitely am. I definitely have a good bit of anxiety and depression while I was drinking, but I think I was using the alcohol to treat my anxiety, and then the alcohol, while treating my anxiety, was causing my depression. So, I didn't know at the time. Like if you would have known me as a kid, you would have not thought I was an anxious person. And like my parents didn't think I was an anxious person. All my friends didn't. But, the reality was I was, even at a young age, using alcohol or like the placebo effect of tobacco to treat my anxiety. And then, it just, as anxiety and depression goes, the longer you don't deal with that stuff, the more it, festers and grows. So never really got better and only got worse until I finally got sober and started dealing with it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you for your honesty on that one, because I was kind of similar. I had horrible anxiety, but I was pretty good at masking it. Like, I mean, I was generally fairly quiet growing up, not always the most outgoing unless I was one-on-one with a close friend or something like that. And maybe I broke out of my shell. But in school and stuff, it's like I had friends, I played sports, got decent grades, but like I was always in my head about everything. So it's like And I never knew like that alcohol would be like at the time, a savior, once I got to college and I was like, I felt kind of sheltered growing up. I still got into trouble and stuff, but I felt like I couldn't break out of my shell. And then when I got into college and it was like 6 hours away at Washington State University. And,
Nice.
so I was like, all right, well, it's time for me to just kind of let loose. I finally have all this freedom. And then I finally started like being more of the life of the party kind of feel, which I'd never felt before, and
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I think I found the magic potion, which was alcohol. And I just was like, I even told myself in my head when I was 21 and I was finally going to bars and I was having fun meeting girls and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, I think I found my magic. I literally told myself I'm going to be an alcoholic and I'm going to drink this the rest of my life, because at that time I didn't know it would ruin my life. So I
Right.
just thought
Yeah.
everything was just fun and games at that time. So yeah.
Yeah. It's real cool right up until it isn't, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun until it isn't. And then you get sick and tired of being sick and tired after years and years of jail and hospital visits and stuff. But speaking
Right.
of those, did you ever have any arrest or hospital visits or anything traumatic?
No, so like I was very fortunate in a way to, I never got in trouble, never hurt myself or hurt others. So it was for the most part a very personal issue, besides kind of like strain that it would put on relationships. But so like I say that was good because, I didn't hurt myself or others, and I don't have stuff from that part of my past following me necessarily, but it also, I don't know, it maybe kept it going a little bit longer than it should have. Like I'm curious now, like if I were to have gotten one of the many DUIs I deserved, several
Yeah.
years ago, if I would have turned my life around a little sooner, and if that would have maybe even been better for me. But yeah, no, so I never had any major injuries or arrests or anything like that. I was fortunate, I guess you'd say.
Did you ever catch yourself towards the end, like at your worst, kind of waking up and having withdrawal symptoms or anything where you felt like you had to drink to function?
Kinda, but not really. Like, um, there were times like if I was on like a vacation or in certain periods, like if I was drinking a lot multiple days in a row, then I would kind of drink a little bit in the morning to, hair the dog, keep it going. But for the most part, like I'm not able to like drink at work necessarily. So for the most part of my life, I just battled through the hangover all day. And then as soon as I got home, if I was still feeling bad, I would drink more and keep it going. But yeah, so like I wasn't necessarily an everyday drinker. I was definitely more of a binge drinker, I guess you would say, or
Yeah. Once you got
whenever the
started, it
opportunity.
just took a while to stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I totally
Like I
get
could
it.
go weeks, or I think, probably the longest I went was 2 months without drinking. And, like a lot of probably still active alcoholics or even recovered, whenever you do those stints, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not an alcoholic because I can go weeks or months without drinking. Like I'm good. I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of, you get back into it, and just deception and all that good stuff that it does to you to keep you wrapped up in it.
Yeah. No, I totally understand where you're coming from. I mean, on the other hand, I saw myself relying on it to function by the time I was like 23 or so. Like I had withdrawal symptoms before, and like took myself to the hospital thinking I was having panic attacks at the time. And they would always ask me, oh, how much do you drink? And I never understood why they would ask me that. I was just like, I'm not home. I hardly drink, even though I drank every single night. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, I'm just having a panic attack. And they would always ask how much I drank, and I'd lie. So once I got older and realized, man, I think I'm really reliant on alcohol because I don't feel normal until I have that first drink. And sometimes those first drinks would happen in the middle of the night just to go back to sleep. So it got that bad after a
Wow.
while. So it's just, yeah, if you hear some of my previous episodes, I describe, waking up not even be able to like put my contacts in, not being able to brush my teeth without shaking. Like it was just terrible.
Dang,
So
that's
sometimes,
crazy.
yeah. So sometimes I wonder when I do hear people who like yourself who were binge drinkers, but they're able to like manage it in some ways and make sure that like they don't do it every single day. I always wonder, like, by definition, does that make you like a full blown alcoholic? Does that make you just like an alcoholic or just a hardcore drinker? But I
Yeah.
mean, I think we're an alcoholic by definition, though. If it ever gets to the point where we need to cut it out of our lives, then probably we had a problem with alcohol. It's just like scientifically, I wonder, there's so many
If
people
it's
out there that say they're not physically reliant on it like I was.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point because, like, being an alcoholic is a pretty broad statement, and it is kind of the same, but also pretty different. Like, I guess you versus me, like drinking every single day versus just a lot every time you drink. That's a very interesting question. I wonder if there would be value to like trying to recategorize or explore the difference in the brain or and whatnot as to.
Yeah.
But
And I
yeah, that's interesting.
and I brought that
I
up
like
and you like what?
Well, I just, I'm of the mindset of I would way rather people over label themselves as alcoholics and get to experience the beauty of sobriety and recovery than,
Yeah.
potentially have somebody like me be like, oh, well, I'm just a binge drinker. I'm just type B alcoholic. So I'm
Yeah.
good. Like, not as bad
Yeah.
as those other ones, you know?
Yeah. I've had people come into AA and they always hear their story, and like there's some people that were like me or maybe worse than me when it comes to like how reliant they were on alcohol. And I'm just kind of, then I hear people come in and say, oh, I just drink on the weekends, but my family thinks I have a problem or this or that. But I'm like, just, maybe scientifically some of us are physically dependent on it. There's some kind of chemical imbalance in the brain that just is different in everybody. And I think I had that imbalance because I have alcoholism runs in both sides of my family and stuff. So I was kind of immune to it. I grew up around alcoholism and stuff. So it's like I just was kind of like bred to be an alcoholic. But, and there's people that just socially drink or can drink and they quit. But, if they're causing if there's enough friction in their lives and problems being caused and relationships being hurt and lies being told, I feel like everybody has the right to consider themselves their own definition of an alcoholic, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure.
It's a topic I brought up in meetings before because I like to hear other people's opinion about it. Maybe this is an idea for you to do on an episode because it is an interesting way to look at
Yeah.
things, like what really makes an alcoholic, because I think it is a broad term. It's kind of like how everybody uses the term gaslighting and narcissist. It's like it's used so freely now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we could all be considered alcoholics if we really look at how much we're drinking and we're putting poison in our body by choice.
Right. Yeah. And that's like I have done one or two episodes like just talking about the basic stuff that makes you an alcoholic, but it is super broad and it is, I think if a lot of people are honest with themselves, it's really not that hard to be categorized as an alcoholic. So,
Yeah.
there probably would be, there's definitely value to exploring that and really getting in depth as to how much it matters. Like if you're just a borderline alcoholic,
Yeah.
like you're, you're still there. I promise, there's a lot of us in recovery that would tell you that you're so much better off without it. So, but it's, as you know as well, like when you're an active alcoholic or an active addict, the voices in your head will do anything to keep you using or drinking. So
Yeah.
that's what makes it so tough because it's like, for those types of scenarios, you really want it to be as broad as possible so you can get as many people help as possible. But at the same time, once you get into it, there's definitely value in the recovery community to kind of understand who you are and what you're more drawn to and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. That's perfectly said, honestly. So speaking of helping others and how you've been going about your recovery, it sounds like you're taking it very seriously, and it sounds like you're doing it not only for yourself but for people in your life too. So what advice would you give to people that are either new to recovery, sober curious, been in recovery, that you think they would find helpful to some of my listeners?
Man.
I know I'm pressing you with questions.
No, yeah, that's a tough one. But
Because whatever you're doing is working. So I think everybody's view on this is different.
well, like even though I don't go to AA as much anymore, I think that, 12-step programs and, following a 12-step program for the first 6 months or whatever of my sobriety was huge, and being around all those voices and really just building a strong foundation, right? I think that is, if you're dead set on getting sober, building a strong foundation through the 12-step or something similar, if that doesn't work for you, um, is huge. But, and then like for sober curious or people, that are maybe not even sober curious, but trying to convince themselves that they aren't alcoholics or something, like I would say go to 3 months of meetings once a week and just experience it. You don't have to speak, you don't have to do anything, but just like that's what was so crazy to me, was sitting in those rooms and seeing people from way different walks of life, different ages,
Yeah.
different demographics, but they feel the exact same way about alcohol as I do. And, they've had very similar experiences with this one particular drug that I do. So I think, and if you're sober curious or you aren't committed, that's fine. Like nobody's saying you have to stay. But I think if more people were just able to go into those rooms and sit and listen and also see the beauty that comes out of those rooms, it would maybe outshine the gloom that alcohol puts on you to stay in active addiction,
Yeah, exactly. That's honestly
That,
really good
yeah.
advice, because it
Yeah,
is
just go try it out.
Yeah, there was no pressure. There's no obligations. You don't have to sign any contracts to walk into a room, So it's like you go
Mhm.
in, it's not for you, don't do it. But I mean, it's never hurts to try though. There's so many different options out there that aren't even AA or not AA related. There's support everywhere. And like you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
about Instagram and stuff, and meeting people on there, like you and I meeting on here, me seeing your page and reaching out. It's like there's a community of people that are here for you and to support you, and there's
Yeah.
millions of advice and options you can find just by reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, what did you do differently, because AA is not working for me, or what sobriety, this is not working for me, or whatever I can't remember what the other one is, sober something. But there's so many different non-AA options as well. And sometimes it's just
Yeah.
having the right people to contact. So that's why I
Yeah,
like the
for
sober
sure.
community. I mean, everybody's there for each other. I think sobriety is becoming more popular than ever. It's not,
Yeah.
there's just as many people I know in my life now. I know more sober people in my life now than I know people that drink. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, I always like to kind of end the episode with like a quote. Is there any quote that you live by, or any kind of life philosophy you like to live by?
Man,
I know my questions are ridiculous sometimes.
I mean, like, if you're in recovery, one day at a time is so simple and so easy to say.
Yep, I agree with that. Just for
But,
today.
and that one is, when times get tough, you really just have to take it one day, 1 hour, one small increment at a time until you get to the next one.
Yep.
Dang, there is this quote that I just heard recently that I want to say. Sorry, give me 1 second. I gotta say
take your
it.
time.
But yeah, don't hold on to a mistake just because you spent a long time making it.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, Austin,
Yeah, I love that one.
really appreciate you coming on the show and responding to my message, because I liked your content. If you want to reach Austin, and they reach you at No Booze Podcast on Instagram, or how's it?
Yep. No Booze Podcast. no spaces. Yeah, and then there should be links to the actual podcast and all that stuff from there.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate having you on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.